everyone, what's up? This is Simon from the Ionic Academy, and in this video I will show you how to use root guards and the resolver with Ionic 4. So this tutorial is based on the beta version of Ionic 4, so perhaps some things might change over the next time, but in general the concepts we use in here are based on Angular, and I don't think they will change a lot over the next time, even once Ionic 4 hits a stable version. So what we're going to do is add a resolver, which basically can resolve data before we enter a new page, and also how to use root guards, which you can use to make your app more secure, use it with authentication to block access to specific pages. So let's go to it. I've created a blank new Ionic 4 app using this command, Ionic start guards resolve blank template, and type Angular. The first thing we're gonna do is use the CLI to generate a new page, and we just call this details. So we will use the home page, which is already there, and the details page, so classic master detail pattern in here. Then we need two more things. So first, Ionic G service, and this will be inside a folder called guards, and we call this one dummy guard. And if you don't want the test files, you can add spec false, which will result in just the dummy guard we got here. Then we do the same thing again, but this time we will call the fun resolver dummy resolve. So those two files will be used. Then we can go ahead and run Ionic Serve in the background and open it once we need it. Next thing is we will make some HTTP requests, and therefore we need, let me bring this back, the HTTP client module. Of course, no import today. So go ahead, import the HTTP client module from @Angular common HTTP. There we go. And then just like always, add it to the imports of your app, and then you're fine. Perhaps we continue with some UI changes. So for the home page, let's call this one guards and resolve. And then in here, we will add some buttons to navigate to our second page. So we use Ion button, expand, whatever you like, let's say block, and then a link to the next page. So if you take a look at the general routing module, we got home, we got details. Perhaps we just change this to another homepage /ID, and this ID can be passed to the new page. So if you've used Ionic 3, you know that you can push pages and add some data, and then you get this through the nav params of the next page. And this is the new way of doing it with the Angular router. And okay, let's continue for now. So let's go to home/1. And what we're gonna do is we use the Pokemon API, and this will or should retrieve the information for the first Pokemon. Also, you can specify the router direction. So what previously was push and worked under the hood is now router direction forward. So the router knows we're basically pushing a new page on our stack. And we will also have to take care of the back button, but we do this in a second. So let's add two more buttons. So get some more specific Pokemon. And now we can also go to the details page, which will be like this. And inside the details page, we add Ion buttons slot start. So at the top left, and inside Ion back button. And this is enough to then show the back button once we navigate to this page. And if you also want to add a default href, you can do it like this, which means if the user is going directly to the details page for some reason, the back button will still appear and take the user back to the home page. And also inside the title, we will later have the Pokemon and just display the name. Let's see where to continue. Perhaps let's bring in the app. And there we are. Okay, it looks nice so far. Of course, we don't have the name yet, but if we comment this out, you see, even if this loads, we can go back and we can go to all the Pokemon and you see the change of the URL. So this is already working pretty nice so far. So let's see what we can do perhaps with the resolver first. So we got our dummy resolve service, and this service now implements the resolve function. Is the import working more or less? Okay. And now this class needs a resolve function, which will basically be called once we navigate to a specific URL. And we do this by adding it to, let's format it a bit different so you see it better. So if you got it like this, you simply add another resolve block in here and then an object. And in here we say we create a new variable Pokemon. So then it will be accessible as Pokemon inside the new page. And to resolve this Pokemon variable, we use our dummy resolve service. Okay, let's go back to the resolve service so we can actually implement the resolve function. So what we need is private HTTP, which is the HTTP client, of course, not the client module. I don't know why my imports are sometimes completely messed up. This is, of course, the package we need. And inside the resolve, we get access to the route we're currently navigating to. And this is the activated route. I think you could use both, but let's use the activated route snapshot in here. So the user is navigating to home slash whatever, 1, 100, 150. And we get this ID by saying route param map get ID. This is exactly the name we had in the routing file. So now we got this 1, 100, 150, and we can return this .http. It should be called HTTP, of course, get with a get to the Pokemon API. So let me bring this in, Poke API / whatever, and then the ID of the Pokemon. And also, besides that, this will already resolve. Perhaps we will just do the resolve for now. So this should be inside the details page. And in here, we also need access to the route the user is navigating to. So activated route, and in the ng on init, let's say Pokemon is null in the beginning. This dot Pokemon is now this dot route snapshot data. And now it's not ID, but Pokemon, because we're resolving it right here. And depending the information to this, perhaps we should lock this out. This might be interesting. Let's lock the snapshot out. And then we can also go ahead and add this back again. So let this compile, and then we go to Pokemon 1 resolver is not a function. Resolve. At which point did we go wrong? Resolve Pokemon dummy resolve service, and the resolve service itself also looks quite nice. Let me check this. Turns out there's not really a problem, just some caching issues perhaps. So let's see, if we hit Pokemon 1, we see that it takes quite some time, and we also get the name up here and we get our log, and in here we can find the Pokemon which has the complete result from the API. And of course, this interaction now looks a bit strange because it's loading, it's resolving, which is good, but it's still loading. So perhaps we should add a loading controller at this point. So let's go back to our resolver, and in here we say, first of all, private, let's call this loading controller. Loading controller. Of course, my import is wrong again. And then this dot loading controller create, which is actually a bit different than Ionic 3. So please hold the line. And with Ionic 3, we could immediately display it. And now this is a promise which actually returns the loading itself. And as we want to hide the loading later on, we should keep track of it. So we can say let loading HTML ion loading element, and then loading equals res and loading present. So a bit might look a bit strange, but we will get used to this. And now we might also want to pipe our action here and then just tap into it. So we don't want to change the data, but simply perform an action, and this time we want to call loading dismiss, and I guess tap needs to be imported from RxJS operators, of course. So now we're showing the loading. The page will resolve, hopefully, and can I do it here? Perhaps. The page will resolve, and then the data is inside our view. So let's check this. We see the loading, and then the page appears with the resolved object. So what is exactly the difference now? We could also subscribe, leave out the resolving completely, and use the root and the past ID in here. And then in here we could make the request using our API service or whatever we got, and then later on assign the result to Pokemon and then display the information. But if we do it like this, the page will be initialized and something like this will break or throw an error. So we would have to use a safe navigation operator in our whole page, and of course in other pages where we do the same. But if we do it with a resolver, the data is actually already present at this point. So this is not async operation, it is already fulfilled in the background, and then the data is here once the page is initialized. So it's a bit different. It's up to you if it not works for you, but this is definitely a great way to make this look a bit more easy and to resolve the information before we're actually accessing the page. Okay, that's everything for the resolve. So let's close this for now, this, and we go to the guards example. So with a guard, you can protect your application. Let's say you only want that specific users who are authenticated can access pages. That's a very common example for using guards. First of all, I will again use the alert controller, and then we say this one implements can activate. So can activate also comes from the Angular router and can be used or applied to different routes of your application to check if the user is allowed to activate a specific route. In our case, the can activate, just like the resolver gets an activated route, or activated root snapshot. And from this snapshot, we can simply get root.param_map get the ID, just like we did inside the resolver. And now let's say it is only allowed to access 1 and 150, and for some reason 100 not. So if this is unequal to 100, you are not allowed. Okay, very stupid dummy example, but works. And if we are allowed, we can basically return true or allowed or whatever, but that's not really interesting here. Interesting is this one. If you're not allowed, the page will not load. And as this might be a bit strange, a good idea is to show a little alert or notification or whatever why the user is actually not allowed. So header sorry, subheader guard prevents this, message whatever, the guard says nope. I think actually this option is new with Ionic 4, but I'm not 100% sure. It just feels like it's somehow new. Again, just like we had with the loading, this is async. So we basically get the alert here and then we call alert present. This would be the short form of what we did with the loading, where we actually needed the loading later on. So now we have created this, and now we go back to the app routing module and say can activate, and you see there are actually more options. So can load, can deactivate to prevent that users leave a page before whatever performing some action, can activate child if there are many childs or child roots. You can completely disable access to them, but we just use can activate now and use the dummy guard service we've created. So now let's see, hopefully it still loads. Guards, this is actually the same error I had a few minutes ago, and I'm completely sure this is just some loading issue. Let me restart my live reload. Yeah, just like I said, I had to restart the CLI serve command for whatever reason. So Pokemon 1 resolve going to the page, perfect. Pokemon 150 loading resolve, nice. Pokemon 100, sorry, guard prevents this. So with the guard, this route is called home 100. Then the guard service checks okay, it's not like this, so we're not allowed. We display the alert and return false, which prevents access to the root. And as a result, you see no loading actually ever happens. The resolver is not called, we're not navigating to the page. It is completely blocked right away, and still everything else works fine. Okay, so this is how you can use guards and a resolver with Ionic 4 and Angular. Both concepts are not really coming or anything new with Ionic. They are in the Angular versions. I don't know when they were introduced, perhaps Angular 4 or even earlier, and they're pretty powerful. So root guards can be used to prevent access to certain roots of your application, especially if you're using authentication, and the resolver can be used to load data before the page is actually displayed, so you can be sure the data is in that page and you can use it more easily. If you want to see more Ionic videos, especially Ionic 4 videos coming over the next time, make sure to subscribe to this video below, and also check out the ionicacademy.com if you are sure and want to learn Ionic today. This is my own platform for video courses, projects, and a community to help you get started and learn Ionic in the best possible way. So I'd love to see you inside. Make sure to subscribe. Have a great day, and I'll see you inside the next video.